welcome to another exciting episode of Faith and Law. Don't forget that this program is solely a program where we talk about the differences and similarities between the law of our land and our religion, or basically where we balance it, where we try to join it together, the law and the religion. On today's episode, we'll be talking about tax obligation. I know a lot of us as Christians have heard that particular verse that Jesus said, give unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. So today, we are going to be talking that in relation with tax obligation. On today's show, I have with me a tax expert, a lawyer, someone who is going to take us through the journey, where we understand what it means to pay tax and how we could pay lesser tax legally, in quotes, legally. I have in the studio here with me a legal practitioner, a member of the Nigerian Bar Association, Barrister Joshua Ayanda. Barrister Ayanda practice area includes taxation, intellectual property, energy law, media law, amongst others. Mr. Barrister Ayanda, you're welcome on the show.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, today basically we'll be looking at the topic, as I've earlier mentioned, and we'll be examining this in the context of a Christian obligation to pay tax. We'll look at what the Bible says about tax, and in other words, we'll look at the scriptural. We'll look at if it was scriptural or if it is scriptural to or not to pay taxes, and then we can look at several ways by which I've heard that there are legal ways by which we could pay reduced tax. Then Barrister Ayanda will also talk about how that is possible and what that is called. Barrister Ayanda, so my first question to you today is, what is a tax?
Thank you very much for that question. On what is a tax? I believe that question is quite important and must be answered, because oftentimes you come across this notes by people that they received this notice from the government, they received this tax, they received that tax, they received this from the local governments. And I dare say a lot of these things are not taxes. A lot of these things can be contested. But that's not the discussion for today. So at least we understand what a tax is today. A tax is a levy imposed by law on all citizens and for the benefit of all citizens. Now, there are four important things to note here. One, a tax is imposed by written law. This is to mean that the local government cannot wake up one day and say, come and pay this. Right? A tax has to be backed by a written law. So whenever they are serving you a notice of a tax, you should have pursuant to a law.
A law should be cited.
A law must back up that tax.
Okay.
So if it's not backed up by a law, it is not a tax. Right. Two, a tax is imposed on all citizens. So if somebody targets you and imposes something on you, it's not a tax. And it's for the benefit of all citizens. A tax cannot go to the coffers of a private individual. Right. So it goes to the treasury of the public. So there are four important elements. One, it must be made by a law. And the rationale behind it is that the government should, as much as possible, not have powers into the private pockets of individuals. If the government is going to have access into the private pocket of individuals, a law must state it. Okay. So that's the rationale. So yes, those are the four important
things. So another question that I have is, can I decide not to pay my tax?
No, that's why I said it's a levy imposed by law. It's an imposition. It's a compulsory imposition. You cannot decide not to pay your taxes. So
what if I fail to pay my
taxes? Now there are two things. For an individual who declines to pay taxes, penalty starts running. Right. There are several times you will need things from the government. You will need, say, someone who wants to get a bail. You will need to show evidence of having paid your taxes. You need to get a contract from government. You need to show evidence of having paid your taxes. And when you default in paying your taxes, if the FIRS or LIRS, as this is in this case, serves you a notice and you decline to pay, then they can execute a notice against your personal effects, against your property. and computing penalty. So it's always safer to pay taxes, right?
Okay. So let's say, for instance,
Yes.
I was served with tax notice of, say, 250,000
1,000 naira.
and I do not want to pay up to that. I run a business and I'm trying to not pay up to that. How do I do it?
Yes. So this is it. First of all, you cannot just receive a tax assessment of 250,000. If you do, then you should contest it. A lot of people do not know that tax assessments can be contested. Right.
Okay.
Right. You can contest your tax
That
assessment.
is, sorry to cut. That is, I could ask, how do you come about this?
You can object to it. By the time you serve the notice, you can object to it, to the you can object to the taxing authority on the assessment.
Okay.
Right. So if you get a tax assessment of 250,000, you must know what sort of assessment is it. There are different kinds of taxes, but that's not what we have today. Is it company income tax? Is it capital gains tax? Is it value-added tax? You must know what sort of tax it is. Then you must know what percentage. Each value-added tax is 7.5%. Company income tax might be 20%, might be 30%. Capital gains tax is 10%. So you must know what tax exactly is. Then, on how to reduce your tax obligations. This principle is called the principle of tax planning. Right. In the principle of tax planning, there are two things. There's something called tax evasion.
I was going to go to that.
And there's something called tax avoidance. Tax evasion is when you say you do not want to pay your taxes. That's tax evasion.
When I'm running away from it.
When you're running away from it. Tax avoidance is using the knowledge of the law to reduce your tax obligations.
Okay.
Right. There are two different things. That's why you would see somebody say, "Oh, this man earns in billions and he paid 2 million naira as a tax." He did not cut corners. He used the law.
So what you're saying basically is that there is a legal backing.
There are several mechanisms in the law to reduce your tax obligations.
So I want you to tell our viewers.
Yes.
What are those mechanisms?
I cannot exhaust everything.
But
I'll just
mention just but a
some.
few. Yeah.
Now, as a company, when you're running your company, there is a tax obligation you should pay. It's called company income tax, right? However, there are some companies in Nigeria that are called pioneer companies.
Well, when you say pioneer, what do you mean?
By pioneer, there are some industries that the government has identified that they need development in. Right. So, founding a company in that line entitles you to something called pioneer status. Some businesses don't know about this. Now, when you qualify for pioneer status and you apply and your application is approved, you are not to pay taxes between 3 to 5 years of your running the company.
So how do I know that
you qualify?
I qualify.
Now, there's a list of companies. If I recall, I believe agriculture is one of it. I believe fintech is one of it. Right. So there's a list of companies that if you invest in, you qualify for pioneer status. There are some conditions for you to qualify for pioneer status. The amount you must have invested in, your registration, and what have you. Now, once you qualify for pioneer status, you have to apply, I believe, to the Ministry of Industry and Commerce. Now, once your application is approved and once you are deemed to have been certified as a pioneer status company, for 3 to 5 years of running the business, you are not to pay taxes.
So, of those
ways of tax avoidance is running a company as a pioneer status company.
Okay. So
also,
after that,
there are deductible expenses. There are several deductible expenses of a company. Now, deductible expenses are not computed for as an accessible income. I'm using technical grammar. Accessible income is the amount that is chargeable against tax. Say, for example, this is a company our accessible income can be 3 million.
Okay.
Our expenses can be 2 million, can be 1 million. Our expenses is not subject to tax. You need a tax expert to be able to work your expenses within the boundaries of the law.
Okay. I'm very sorry to cut you short, Barrister Joshua.
Yes.
Just before we take that you were trying to talk about,
Yes.
let's quickly go on a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Enjoy inspirational, informative, and soul-lifting Christian programs such as Christian Parenting and Homefront, Light After Darkness, Fulfilling the Mandate, Kids and Bible, Movies Review, Shepherd's Spouse, Kingdom Stars, Teens Perspectives, My Next Gospel Event, and lots more on Divine Television. Download Divine TV mobile app on Google Play Store or watch on our YouTube channel. You can also visit www.tvdivine.net. Divine TV, enriching souls through the gospel of Christ.
Welcome back, and it's still faith and law. And I mean your very, 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 very humble host, Joy Bakari Ojoko. Before we went on that short break, Barrister Ayanda was trying to tell us something. Let's go back to him.
Yes, I was talking about deductible expenses. Now, deductible expenses are expenses that are not chargeable as taxable income. So, a company makes 5 million naira gross profit. Its deductible expense can be 1 million, 2 million, depending on how the company, as within the boundaries of the law, worked its expenses. And this is why you find some company buy houses in the name of the company. This is why you find some company buy cars in the name of the company. So why another person is loafing around and amassing cars and amassing properties, and every day you find out he has gone down. A frugal and smart company, on the other hand, will put all of these liabilities or all of these expenses on the company.
I see.
Right. So it becomes a deductible expense against the accessible income. And that is why you would see that all these people who have billions, right, would pay what you, who has millions, is paying as taxes. And then you say, oh, they are cooking their books. They are not cooking their books. They are working within the boundaries of the knowledge of the law. That is tax avoidance.
Okay, that's one of the planning options.
Yes.
Is there any other one?
Oh, there are several others. Now, there's something called capital gains tax. Now, capital gains tax, let me make sure everybody understands this. When you want to buy a property, to perfect your title document, to register your title document, so you want to go and register it at Lausa, for example, then someone have something called governor's consent. Now, the process of perfecting your title documents has 3 stages: governor's consent, stamping, and registration.
Yeah.
At the point of stamping, you must have paid something called capital gains tax.
Okay.
Yes, they're going to assess all your all your taxes, and one of the taxes that you must have paid is capital gains tax. Now, what is capital gains tax? Capital gains tax is tax on the I don't want to say profit. It's tax on the gains that accrues on the disposal of an asset. Now, let me explain this. If I sell my property, I bought this property for 5 million, I sold this property for 10 million, I accrued 5 million naira gain. Out of that 5 million naira gain, I paid 10% of the 5 million naira gain as capital gains tax, which is 500,000 naira.
Okay.
Yes, 500,000. That is what everybody will do. So, but a smart individual will, if somebody wants to sell a property, buy a property worth 100 million, wants to sell a property in the value of 500 million. He has made a gain of 400 million. 10% of 400 million is 40 million. So instead of just leaving it like that, the principle is that if you buy that same class of assets, within that chargeable year, you don't pay capital gains tax. Yes.
Come again.
Now, if you buy that same asset, that same class of assets,
Yes.
within the accessible year, within that year, you don't pay capital gains tax. Right. So I sell this company's property for 400 million, right? And I buy another property worth for 50 million. That for that same company. to suit that same purpose, you don't pay capital gains tax.
So I don't pay capital. That is very, very interesting.
So there are several ways, but somebody who just closes his eyes and says, I'm not paying, that is tax evasion. Or somebody who uses the mechanics of the law to work around his tax obligations. He has not committed any offense. It's finally within the boundaries of the law, and that's tax avoidance.
Okay. So basically, we've been learning the planning options, ways by which we could, participate in tax avoidance. Before we continue, now we have looked at the legal aspects of
yes, but I must quickly mention that this is not legal advice, right? So if you would want more or accurate, or if you would want exact legal opinion, you must consult a lawyer or a tax expert. So don't just run with it and say, oh, this, that.
Of course, Vice Ayanda. Of course, the place of a lawyer cannot be overemphasized.
Yes.
Whether you want to just sign a contract, whether you want to do whatever, always give that particular piece of document to a lawyer to vet.
Another way to reduce your tax obligation, don't let me use the word to avoid taxes, to reduce your tax obligation is by founding a company for charitable purposes.
Okay, that is to say that NGOs don't pay. Oh, okay.
NGOs don't pay taxes. At least they don't pay company income tax, which is about 20 to 30% of the accessible income.
I see.
Yes. So a charitable institution does not pay taxes. Yes. So, and there are a lot of others also. For VAT, for value added tax, a lot of people are also not aware of this. That's one. There are a list. Now, this is how the section that states that value added tax should be paid, states it if I'm very accurate. It says value added tax is chargeable against goods and services except those exempt under this act. Now, in Schedule 1 to that act, it goes ahead to list some exceptions. So, if you want to go and buy some items, you ought not to pay VAT on it. For example, raw food materials. Yes, you don't pay VAT. So, if you go and you want to, okay, the woman by the roadside may not collect VAT from you, but you go to a store and you want to buy raw food materials, you shouldn't pay VAT on it. Educational books and materials. It used to be just books and materials, but then it was amended to educational books and materials. You want to buy educational books and materials, or your business is in the line of educational books and materials, you don't pay VAT. Right. Okay. You don't pay VAT. Yes, so there is that list. If I'm correct, also pharmaceutical products. Okay. You don't pay VAT. And the idea is tax is a way of affecting policies, right? In order to ensure that the prices of raw materials don't shoot up, don't charge VAT against it. In order to ensure that education is promoted, right, in the society, don't pay VAT against it. And pharmaceutical products are called to human living, so you shouldn't pay VAT on them.
Thank you very much for that explanation. I want us to look at the religious aspect of taxation. But before we do that, let us go on this very short break. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
Hey guys, I am Laya Glitz by name and I'm welcoming you all to the movie review segment. This promises to be fun and interesting. Movie review segment in the sense that I will be telling you guys about faith-based movies. Faith-based movies that will tell you about your spiritual warfare, that will set your foot on the right path. Okay, this is where I am lacking. This is what I need to do. And these are the movies I should buy in my house to watch, especially for your children, even for we adults, yes. So guys, make it a date with me on Divine TV. Divine TV, enriching souls through the gospel of Christ.
Welcome back. It is still your show, our show, Faith and Law, and I remain your host, Joy Bakari Ojoko. Before we went on that short break, Barrister Ayanda has explained a lot of tax planning options to us, ways by which we could
reduce our tax
Reduce, because
obligations.
he said we should not use the word avoid, because a lot of you would think avoid means run away from paying.
Yes.
So so ways by which we could reduce the amount we pay as tax to the government, which are, by the way, legal, and of course by the aid of a legal practitioner who is vast in that field. So by saying that,
Yes.
when I was preparing for this, I stumbled on, knowing that you are a Christian, you know, a very versatile one, one that is grounded in the Word of God. I stumbled on, you know, places where people asked Jesus,
Yes.
so what should we do? Are we supposed to pay tax to the government? Are we supposed, if Caesar has said this, should we do it? And all, and what have you? He gave some responses, but I want you to shed light on this. So what are your thoughts on that, sir?
Yes. I must mention that as Christians, we must be civil
Yeah.
and must be law abiding. And not minding whatever is obtainable in the society. The standard of a Christian is the Bible, is the scriptures. So as you mentioned, we need to give recourse to the scriptures on what the Bible mentions on taxation.
Yeah.
So yes, you accurately mentioned it, that Jesus was asked a question. Tax was asked from Jesus' disciples. The disciples came to meet Jesus and they told Jesus, should we pay taxes? that I believe is a very defining moment, because if Jesus had said no, it would have meant do not obey the laws. And then Jesus called and said, give me this coin, and said, whose picture is on it?
He's on it.
And they said, Caesar. I said, give unto Caesar
That which is
Caesar's.
Caesar.
You must be mindful that Caesar was a government authority at that time.
Yes.
Now, our government authority is our laws. Our laws have said, pay taxes. Jesus obeyed the government authority and the government instruction in those days. The meaning of a Christian is Christ-like. So we are to be like Jesus.
Yeah.
Now, if Jesus obeyed the instruction then, the only implication for us is that we can only follow Jesus' example and likewise pay our taxes.
Yeah.
I must also mention that, thankfully, we have also mentioned on tax avoidance. The rationale of taxation is that it should not be a burden on the citizens. Right? Taxation must never be a burden on the citizens. So you're employing the knowledge of tax avoidance and knowing that it is a scriptural obligation which Jesus himself has given assent to, should guide us in how to discharge our tax obligations.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. I must also mention that some people will say, we don't have roads. So, you'll say, see my road now. They'll say, there's no security, so why should I be paying taxes? They would say, the government is not providing anything. There is no water. I create my own facilities myself. So why should I pay my taxes? In answer to that, the world over, right, the reason behind taxes is that you can even do business in the first place. Now, the government, some people say, the government has not provided this, the government has not provided that, and so I should not pay my taxes. The world over, it's not that the government should help your business, that you can do business in the first place, that you can sit in this place without some people coming to burn down this place, is one reason why you should pay your taxes. So it's that the government has created an environment in the first place. And because you can do business in that environment, you pay your taxes. In order to sustain that environment.
And also improve
now,
it.
Doing more, right, is something the government should do. All right. But that you can even do business in the first place is a reason why you should pay your taxes.
Pay your tax. Thank you very much, Barrister Ayanda. So basically, to sum up what he has said is that as a Christian, being a Christian means being Christ-like. And if you are Christ-like, you will do just as Jesus has done in his days here on earth. And how did he handle the situation of tax? He said, give unto Caesar. If they have come to meet you that pay your tax, then you pay it. So as a Christian, we are to obey the laws of the land, and in obedience, that means we should be a tax payer. Thank you very much, Barrister Ayanda, for that exposure. I really was all grounded in this tax aspect until you came on the show. Thank you very much. I have learned a lot on the program, and I hope you too have learned one or two things on today's episode. So this is where we're going to draw the curtain on today's discussion. Please don't forget to download our mobile app on your Play Store, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel, Divine TV. See you same time, same station. Until I come your way again, I remain your host, Joy Bakari Ojuko.